All right, I am good to start if y'all are good to start.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, I want to thank everyone, first of all, for jumping in and going onto this webinar with us. As it was shared in the link, this webinar is a presentation-based model. You'll be able to put commentary in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. As always, the City of Boerne is using keen independent research for its arts and culture master plan. I will be handing it over to Roxana Filipowska and Alex Keene, who are leading this charge for us. And we want to, again, make an emphasis to thank those who have participated, both through our survey, our first meeting we held here at the Boerne City Hall in the training room, as well as the focus groups we had leading up to this first draft. And with that, I'll hand it over to Alex and Roxana.
Thank you. Good evening. Nice to be here tonight. We are very, very pleased to present our draft City of Boerne Arts and Culture Master Plan, emphasizing draft. We'll continue to kind of say this throughout the evening. We are here to hear your feedback. We want to make sure that this plan is reflecting what you think and feel about arts and culture in Boerne. So please share your feedback, like Nick said in the chat, or you can certainly email us at boerneartsandculture@keenindependent.com. And we also have a study hotline, which should be at the end. So introducing myself, I'm Alex Keene, principal at Keene Independent Research. Keene Independent Research is a national consulting firm. We have many different practices, and one of them is arts and culture. We have done these plans nationwide, and many of us are former practitioners in the arts and cultural sector. So this has been a lot of fun getting to know Boerne, and getting to know more about your community, which we've been really impressed with. It's been a lot of fun to spend time there. We've physically been there, gotten tours, met with folks, seen all of your amazing assets, and we're really pleased that we're kind of walking into a community where there's already so much, and we're really here to just enhance and help sort of think strategically about arts and culture in the years to come. So going back one slide, I skipped already to us, just sort of an overview of our presentation. So we talked a little bit about how we got here. We'll be talking about the methodology of an arts and culture master plan and sort of how you put them all together. We'll have an overview of the draft plan. I'm sort of talking about some of the major categories and our key findings. And so everything you're going to see is at a very high level, but there will be significantly more detail in the written plan. We'll have our key recommendations for the city and sort of how to implement those recommendations and sort of examples of how to do that, and inviting you for that feedback that we've been emphasizing so far as we get started tonight. So sort of proceeding forward. Just sort of another thing to note here. So we talked about doing this at a national level. We have done similar plans, similar arts and culture plans for the city of San Marcos, Texas, the city of Salina, Texas. So two other Texas communities, the city of Golden, Colorado, the city of Littleton, Colorado, and the city of Jefferson City, Missouri. That this in collaboration with probably 100 other plans that we have done that are sort of similar to arts and culture master plans. And one of the things that's really great about doing this work at a national level, but also in Texas, is we see a lot of patterns, right? So we go into a lot of different communities and learn about them and hear from their stakeholders. And every community is unique. Every community really stands alone, but we also can sort of help apply some, things that we learn in one community to another. And so that's something that we really try to integrate into all of our work, is bringing that expertise and perspective from that kind of sort of national lens, but also really understanding the fact that Boerne is unique and is of one, right? And so that's something else that we very much emphasize in our planning work. So just working through the methodology a little bit. So how do we do this? Well, one of the most important things we do is engage all of you. We engaged over 250 residents and community members as part of this project. So that was everybody from your sort of, your neighbor to local arts and cultural practitioner to local business owner to somebody involved in city leadership. We talked to everybody, and we certainly created as many avenues as we could for engagement. And we're really proud of all of the different ways that we were able to get your opinions and feedback, including having public meetings, interviews and focus groups. We did a virtual workshop survey. We had our study website and that email and hotline. Other things that we did, well, we learned that Boerne's history and heritage is so important to the community and its character. And we spent a lot of time learning about that and sort of synthesizing that information in a way to help support the Arts and Cultural Master Plan. We don't think that Arts and Cultural Master Plans sit in a vacuum. They're really, the plans support other planning efforts that your communities have already conducted. So, that's sort of the larger plans that govern how your city operates. Well, that Arts and Culture Master Plan is a piece of that and should really reflect your existing planning efforts. We inventoried your existing assets. So what do you have in Boerne? What type of arts and cultural assets are already there? So I mean, anything from going to and sort of seeing what the high school has to public art downtown to your different statues in the community, looking at some of your sort of trail systems and event and gathering spaces. We really tried to understand, okay, where is Boerne today, and what all have you already invested in when it comes to arts and culture? And then we looked at sort of where is Boerne going. So we looked at demographics, we looked at population trends, we're looking at growth and demand forecasting. And this methodology is something we've used on many of our plans to be successful. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Roxana to continue chatting a little bit about the plan.
Thanks so much, Alex. And hi, everyone. I'll briefly introduce myself. So my name is Dr. Roxana Filipovska. I'm a consultant with Keene Independent. For those of you who I've had the pleasure to meet back in April, it's so great to connect with you again through this format. It's been such a pleasure to meet with you, speak with you through the focus groups, the interviews, and just remembering back that Alex and I were on site during the time of the right before the total solar eclipse. So Boerne's a very memorable place. On this slide, you have our table of contents for the draft plan, and you also have a QR code. So if you haven't had a chance to review the draft plan summary, feel free to scan the QR code and take a look at that as I'll be speaking. And just to walk you through the plan as a document, note that the summary, the draft summary that you have access to, there's the introduction, there's the section 2 called the executive summary, where we go through what we learned about the culture at Boerne and what we learned about your arts and cultural assets, as well as the role of the city in supporting art and culture. Next, section 3, that's recommendations. And you'll see the extent to which recommendations are thematic. So there are big themes to them, but we also break them down into really tangible examples of how that recommendation can happen. So what we're going to be presenting today is that top layer, but just please do refer back to the draft plan summary and take a look at everything in the recommendations to see how those recommendations impact arts and culture and really livelihood within Boerne. Finally, section 4 of the draft plan summary is the implementation plan, and that's really how do we get this plan to work? What are the tangible steps? Who's in charge? Who are the collaborators? And some recommended starting points. Section 5 appendices, it's the supporting documents. And so that is not part of the draft plan summary. Know that there's a lot more information that goes into this, which will be part of the final plan. And these appendices, these supporting documents, it makes the plan be a very robust document of over 100 pages. And so we're hoping that the executive summary, the summary plan that you reviewed today and that we're reviewing today is a more accessible entry point into the arts and culture master plan. So moving forward, I'll next speak about our key findings throughout the study. And the first one is about culture. When we talk about an arts and culture master plan, we're not just talking about murals or public sculpture. We're talking about how the community gathers. We're talking about how history is celebrated. And so, one of the things that we were invited to do was to reflect back to you all what is really unique about Boerne and what is unique about your culture. And so, what we found is that Boerne's culture is refined while also being rooted in its heritage and the landscape of the hill country. So you might think about, for instance, a craftsperson, right? Somebody who is very much aware of their materials and the history and their lineage, but there's such a high quality to it. And that's what really came through with working on the Arts and Culture Master Plan for your community. There's such a it's very hardworking and there is such a focus on quality. So again, the culture is refined while being rooted in heritage and landscape. On the right-hand side of the screen, you see a word cloud, and that was generated through resident feedback and community feedback through a virtual workshop survey. The survey was live out in the field for over a month, and folks were invited to share what makes Boerne unique in one word or one phrase. And so you see the words that appear larger were mentioned more frequently. So people, they think Boerne, they think historic, small town, downtown, businesses, community. And on the left-hand side, you see some stakeholder quotes that people shared. So many people mention Boerne is as unique as its name. In many ways, uniqueness is inherent to Boerne. But it's the people who make Boerne unique. The landscape, the spirit of philanthropy, it's the people who make Boerne unique. So a sense of community, and that's what we learn time and time again. Finally, the quote on screen, the vibe of Boerne is a cute downtown with unique dining. Again, it's not a place where there are multiples of the same thing. There's a lot of interest in unique dining, unique businesses. And so the Arts and Culture Master Plan, the draft that we're presenting today, is really aiming to how do we activate all of that uniqueness? How do we make sure that there are those unique voices? Next, we look at key findings, interest in arts and culture. So what you see on screen is also from that virtual workshop survey. And so we invited participants to respond back to the statement. The statement is, I would like to see more art and culture in Boerne. And so you could express strong agreement, or you could say that you're neutral or disagree. And what we found was that 95% of respondents expressed agreement with the statement, I would like to see more art and culture in Boerne. And when you look through the draft plan, you also see that people expressed agreement around seeing more of performances and theater, also the way that the community gathers. So really all aspects of arts and culture. We also asked about what is the city of Boerne's government role in supporting art and culture. And to this prompt, about 80% expressed agreement to the statement, the city of Boerne government has a key role in supporting arts and culture. And throughout the stakeholder interviews and focus groups, we heard time and time again that the city's role is there to support existing efforts. And I'll just mention that our own methodology, right, as the consultants who came in to support you on this project, is we're not really here to emphasize something that we're seeing elsewhere or introduce something new, but we're really thinking about how to enhance what is working, how do we support what is working. And similarly, we heard that your stakeholders are really looking to the city as somebody who is supporting, the city is supporting existing cultural efforts. We heard people say public art and placemaking really make unity. And putting this together with the slide about culture, right? It's not just the same public art or placemaking all throughout Boerne, but really thinking about how each unique place can be activated and its history communicated through art and placemaking. We also heard that there's a need for a strategy, because actually when you have a strategy, it does prevent miscommunication and oftentimes mis misused resources. And so one thing that you can approach the Arts and Culture Master Plan as is a strategy for the city and its support of existing art and culture. Going down to the last quote on this page, somebody shared, it's not just about the art, a space to take classes and meet people, it's about the community we're building. And so that's something to emphasize here, is that an arts and culture plan, when it is put into action, it builds community, it supports community. Next, we'll cover again that high level of recommendations. And so the recommendations for the city fall into the following categories. The first category is promote local arts and culture. Again, this is how does the city support existing arts and culture? The second category is celebrate Boerne's history and heritage through placemaking. Placemaking can be a lot of different things. It can be public art, it can be historic signs, right? But it can also be a place that is recognizable, maybe a colorful bench with functional design, maybe a designated place where the community gathers. And so linking placemaking with history and heritage, we recognize that there's a lot of history and heritage that Boerne can celebrate. We learned about the long-term citizen service within the fire department, and even before the fire department was formed. We learned about Boerne's German heritage, also its heritage as a refuge for free thinkers. And so there's a lot of history to be highlighted through placemaking. Next theme is participate in partnerships. And if you look at this recommendation in the draft plan summary, you see how that gets broken down into what kind of partnerships and how those can be activated. Next, develop policies and procedures related to arts and culture. In our experience, we find that if there is a clear procedure for a city taking care and stewarding public art and also heritage, that allows for more resident input, and it also ensures that there is stewardship of heritage for generations to come. And so this recommendation is where we've identified where there is an opportunity to really introduce recommended practices that streamline things for the city and also ensure that residents and community members know how to get involved and also are aware of what the city's efforts are. Finally, the fifth category is plan for the future. A lot of the recommendations are about supporting, enhancing, cultivating what is there in the present. And we also are aware that community members are also asking about the future and what they would like to see down the line. So what does this look like? This page, this slide shows a couple of examples of those recommendations. Again, if you're feeling like they're pretty abstract, please do take a look at the draft plan summary so you can see how these get broken down. But how might the city promote local arts and culture efforts? Well, one example is strengthen arts and culture representation in the community calendar. And this includes streamlining the process of promoting anything that's on the calendar, what's on it, who gets to submit, and how the submission process happens. Another example, this is for the recommendation of placemaking. We recommend activate parks and trails through functional design and public art that emphasizes place. You have some really fantastic parks and trails, and you're already doing so much within your parks. Throughout the virtual workshop survey and stakeholder interviews, we saw that people see parks and trails as a place to celebrate Boerne through arts and culture in a way that is integrated within the natural landscape. And so we offer some concrete strategies for activating parks and trails. Next, when it comes to partnerships, there's an example of exploring opportunities to collaborate with local nonprofits. Again, there is a lot that is happening right now that the city can play a role in supporting and gathering and encouraging cross communication and cross support. For the recommendation of creating policies and procedures related to art and culture, one example is creating an art in public places policy. So this is a policy that would ensure a process of how does the city acquire a work of art, how does it steward it. It also oftentimes includes some conservation planning, which long term really prevents degradation of the artwork, and also it prevents a lot of cost to the city that is stewarding it. Finally, for the recommendation of plan for the future, one example is identify sites for arts and culture amenities and events. So this is a recommendation that involves planning and planning for this step. So we heard a lot that the community would like to see more spaces for whether it's displaying art or performing art or gathering as a community. And so there are some strategies for identifying locations and amenities that would be really supportive of that. Next, I'm going to hand it back to Alex to talk about how those high-level recommendations get put into action.
Thanks, Roxana. And I'll just note, there's tremendous amount of detail within the plan where this is, these types of plans are often sort of, the recommendations are at a 30,000-foot level, but then you'll see quite a bit more detail, and that detail really is reflected in the implementation plan. So this is an example page out of the report that sort of shows the recommendation, and then works through and helps set measurable goals. And that's one of the things that we think is really important, is that each of the goals, a staff member or a community member can say, okay, how much of this has actually gotten done, right? And so you can actually point to specific things that have been achieved that reflect the goals in the plan. So for example, we have this sort of recommendation, highlight local arts and culture in city marketing. So we'll have the lead, which is what is the lead department within the city in this case. So that would be the communications department for the city of Boerne. And then we oftentimes will identify collaborators, whether it's other city departments or local nonprofits. And in this case, the collaborator with the communications department is Visit Boerne. And so we'll sort of say, okay, well, when are we going to get this started? And we think that some of this is probably already started, right? The city is oftentimes highlighting arts and culture in city marketing. So we think that could start now because it's already going. And you'll see sort of an interim goal where we identify, in this case, local arts and culture are featured at least quarterly in city materials. And so the quarterly is the key word there, which is we can measure that. Have we included arts and cultural announcements and sort of highlighting different organizations and things going on? Have we done that quarterly in marketing materials? We can sort of check that box. So that's that interim goal by 27. And then the stretch goal, which is to say, okay, if things are going really well, what could we achieve? In this case, it's most city marketing materials feature local arts and culture to show that they're integral to Boerne's identity and appeal. So, hey, let's get started by 27. Let's really have things going by 29. That's how this is sort of organized. And it continues on in this case. But there will be a page like this for each recommendation or series of recommendations for the plan. And they help make sure that we can hold different departments accountable to the responsibilities that the plan is sort of highlighting, identify collaborators, and help sort of give measurable start dates and set goals for achievement. And I'll just note here, plans are meant to be flexible. So this implementation plan, some of this will go exactly as planned, and some of it will require adjustment to respond to the changing needs of the community and the changing ecosystem environment. So we certainly understand that a plan is really a tool for sort of developing a process for the city. But there will be things that are done quicker than what we're saying, and there's going to be items that are maybe go sort of evolve in a different form. I'll also note that, one of the things we really believe in is sort of as we as consultants take the city through a process to develop an arts and culture master plan, the planning is important too, right? Just the process of going through planning and doing the inventory and, running your demand projections. It helps you sort of understand this ecosystem and the arts and cultural economy and sort of how it fits within the greater sort of thinking around Boerne's future. And that is another part of this sort of process that can be intangible at times, but incredibly valuable for the community, its citizens, and the staff that help make Boerne a great place to live. So just sort of another note, this is very technical looking through an implementation plan, but it has a lot of impact in a lot of different ways.
Thanks, Alex. And so I'm going to outline next steps. And for anyone who is live with us right now, please don't hesitate to put any sort of comments, questions into the Q&A. So right now we have not yet received any comments. So just know that we are here to answer your questions. We are here to acknowledge your comments. So there is a feature called question and answer, and you can type that in. So as you are typing your feedback, I'll direct some of your attention back to the screen. And so you see that there is a QR code on screen. This QR code brings you to the study website, which will continue to be a resource for the rest of the month. So please do submit feedback on the draft plan through Friday, September 27th. You can visit the study website, which you have written here, as well as connected to the QR code. You also have the study email and you have the hotline. And so we do answer questions, and anything that comes through in the hotline, we acknowledge, and also the email. Oh, great. I am seeing the first question. And so I am going to answer this. I will read it out loud. So there's a question of who are the people who are in your focus groups and how long have they lived here? Thank you for your question. So, so the focus groups, right? We spoke with, we engaged with residents through a public meeting, which was in person back in April. We also spoke with people virtual or in person through focus groups and interviews. And then we also had the virtual workshop survey. So we engaged residents and community members through all of those ways. And through all of those ways, the public meeting, the focus groups, the email feedback, also the virtual workshop survey, we had a mixture of people, but the majority are longtime residents. And so when you review more of the plan, you'll actually see a breakdown, for instance, of the ages of the residency in Boerne, and you'll see that it's quite significant. There's also a comment about, do we get a copy of this recording? Yes, I believe that the next step after this is to post the recording to the study website. So again, the study website is a resource for you all. Alex, I'm going to see if you had time to check any other questions that you would like to jump in on as I start reviewing them too.
No, I think that several of these are about, how many engagements came in and when. So one of the things I was going to do is pull up the report. I was going to the section sort of talking about the virtual workshop and sort of can pull out some demographic characteristics there. So just give me 1 second.
I think I have that too. Okay, so let's see. So about 50% of our virtual workshop survey participants have lived in Boerne for 20 plus years. So again, about 50% of the respondents lived in Boerne for 20 plus years. And in the public meeting, in the focus groups and interviews, we saw a similar breakdown where about half of the people we spoke with were longtime residents.
And Sarah, if you scan the QR code here on your phone, you can get right to where the plan is. You could also follow the website address here, www.keenindependent.com/studies/Boerne Arts and Culture.
And I'll jump in here too. There's a question about, did we speak to all the local artists here from different disciplines? So did we speak to all the local artists? No, because we know that there are many creatives, right, in the city of Boerne. However, we did speak with visual artists, and within visual art, of course, many different disciplines, right? So many different genres. So whether it's sculptors or mural painters or craftsmen, et cetera. So we spoke with a wide variety of visual arts practitioners. We spoke with performers, we spoke with musicians, we spoke with dancers, and there were several focused attempts at engaging with artists. And again, in the virtual workshop survey, we also had people express whether they were a hobbyist. So, for instance, do they make art and engage with art for fun, or are they professional artists? And it gets also broken down into arts educators. So we spoke with arts and culture supporters, arts educators, artists, professional artists, and also hobbyists.
So I'll jump in and talk about Sharon's question here. So the question is, what would the cost added to be to the budget with these recommendations to include city responsibility for stewardship maintenance if this is placed in policy? So, kind of back to a little bit of what I was saying earlier, how this is a really 30,000 foot view, right? So this is more strategic thinking about arts and culture in Boerne. We didn't necessarily do, say, like a feasibility study, or there are like specific public art plans where you look at, okay, well, you're going to put in 50 pieces of public art, they're going to approximately cost this much, and they're going to cost this much to maintain. That may be something that, that type of work or something similar, something that Boerne may, do in the future, and is likely done in the past in some capacity. But most of our recommendations here are really more thinking about, you put a bunch of people in the room and have them think about the strategy about how to kind of focus on Boerne's future when it comes to arts and culture. And it's going to take those folks to come up with some ideas, right? And so, kind of think about, okay, what are we doing well? What can we be doing better? But there's definitely examples here where there could be some type of cost. For example, I'm looking at recommendation 1, promote local arts and culture. If you're on section 3, page 1, highlighting local arts and culture might look like, and that's the kind of the key word is we're giving ideas. So spotlight local arts and culture practitioners and organizations in city marketing. Well, the city's already doing marketing, so how can they sort of incorporate spotlighting arts and cultural practitioners into that work? It's not necessarily an additional cost. Installing banners on Main Street highlighting local art and culture. There may be some cost to that banner program, but it's not significant. This is more, really building that sense of place. We're certainly not, recommending that tomorrow Boerne should spend, an incredible amount of money on some huge asset. It may be that Boerne needs to study whether something like that makes sense, but generally we are not making any recommendations that, will have a significant impact to the overall budget of the community.
And I'll use this opportunity from a staff standpoint to jump in. We're being very careful about how we proceed with this plan. To Alex's point, this is a good foundational piece that will allow us to put a lot of the things in place from both the policy standpoint as well as a procedural standpoint that lets us get to the point where we can make more specific recommendations in the future. And if you have the opportunity to go look at that draft plan, when we talk about planning for the future, there's a piece in there about considering conducting an actual more detailed, probably a 5 to 10,000 foot view public art master plan. And that's where you get into a lot more of recommendations that would have potentially budgetary impacts and things like that. But at this point, we really are looking to get a foundational piece that allows us to grow and operate in the future and really leverage the relationships we have, as well as develop new relationships to make these things happen in the future.
Thank you. It's great clarification. Yes, I think that's, every plan is sort of built on other plans, and then there's other plans that tend to lead from them. One thing working with a lot of cities, there's a lot of plans. I think there's some other questions about any other sort of council members or city staff and what their level of support is. I think that's, I think that's something that they will likely be sharing kind of in the weeks ahead as this plan moves forward. But one of the things that's going to be important to the city is for you all to share your feedback and really, submit your public comments. And that's something that we will be synthesizing into our plan, and certainly sharing with city staff and council as the plan moves forward. So this is meant to reflect your community and your wishes and your desires. And so we're certainly here to listen. And that's why we're here tonight, and why we'll continue to monitor our methods of engagement moving forward.
There's a question about how many people were engaged in the public meeting versus other forums. And so we had about 40 folks at the public meeting. And so the rest of that 250 were through other avenues. There is also a question about our role. So our role as consultants in this, and just mentioned that one of the challenges and the privileges of being a consultant is you get to enter a community and get to know it, and also acknowledge that there are so many people local doing the hard work, and there are so many local people who will continue to do the hard work. And so we view our role again is to enhance what is happening, what is already going on. We are familiar with the region. We completed a similar plan for San Marcos. And a quick note just about the language. So somebody expressed a question about why it's called a master plan. And so we are reflecting the language that the city uses for its different planning efforts. But just know that these kinds of plans are called different things in different communities and different cities, but it is meant to be in line with the city's other planning efforts, and it's meant to support the city's other plans.
And I'll ask Nick to chime in a little bit. There's lots of theory as to why a city would hire a consultant, and it shouldn't be the consultant that answers that question.
No, completely. And it's actually an excellent question. So, whenever we look to do any type of plan or strategy or guide, however you'd like to call it, we look to gain a certain level of expertise that we may not have within the community. We have excellent resources here in a lot of different avenues, but we don't have anyone at that giant planning level, right? This happens across the board when we talk about, let's look at consultants that we would use for infrastructure projects, or to use unfortunately a word that seems to be the capitalized word, the master plan. We look to consultants that do this on a regular basis for communities of a certain size. And when we go out and we look for qualifications and standards to be met, this is how we typically end up going through our selection process and choosing the right consultant that we feel will give us the best opportunity in the future with the plan that we receive by working with them.
Nick, have you read Jeff's comment yet?
I'm working my way down.
Sort of in line with your previous comment. So if you want to take the first crack at answering
Talking
that, I'm
about
happy to add.
Jeff's comment, correct?
Yes, Jeff Flynn.
Mr. Flynn, I should say. That is an excellent question. So I don't know that we've had the same type of or level of conversation that we're talking about having here. As we implement these plans, it's very important to kind of what's the best way to put this? So with our rolling 10-year plan, it's a prime example of that, right? We were able to combine all of our plans into one effort to where we're able to go to council with this and say, we'd like to move forward with this initiative or that initiative or anything like that. This document gives us that planning capability to say, well, we have this here, and it's been shown through our planning process and through our data gathering process that this is where we want to focus money or focus dollars or focus attention realistically. And then we can present that to council, and council ultimately will make the decision as to whether or not that's something that they wish to fund in any certain year. I would see this as giving a structure that allows us to present a more coherent case rather than an I think I feel case, which is always a more difficult case to present when we're talking about budget monies, especially.
Thank you. And Edward Rogers said, where do we go from here? Who in the community will be involved? Roxana, do you want to sort of take the first part of that and maybe speak to a little bit of the sort of the perspective on the community?
Great, thank you. So where do we go from here? So following the next couple of weeks are very important. Again, following this presentation, there is a time for you all to provide feedback. Based on that feedback, we will pass along the draft. Again, it's still a draft of the arts and culture plan to the city. And so eventually, when it goes up to city council, it will again be something that is reviewed by the city and by the community. And once it is adopted, that implementation plan that Alex introduced will go into action. So Alex highlighted some of the things about there are activities that you all are already doing. And so that plan will enable the city to know who is the main point person to gather that information, who is a collaborator, as well as the focused efforts around, okay, are we getting meetings on the calendar? Are we ensuring that this partnership is officially moving forward? So using the implementation plan to structure the next steps. But I'll also mention that when you review the draft plan summary and also take a look at the section on develop policies and procedures, that section, a lot of the policies and procedures, it is about, again, streamlining processes while also identifying when residents and how can residents be involved in the process. So the community will continue to be involved. And as has been mentioned throughout this presentation, the draft plan and also the plan when it is adopted, these are living documents. So they are going to be, they can be tweaked, they can be really changed in response to what is happening and how things are progressing.
And I'll just add, and I sort of say this at the end of a lot of projects, it's up to the community to hold your local government accountable to take action on the plan, right? This is something for you all to monitor and be encouraging your local city staff and council to be acting on the plan elements. We've done our best to synthesize how the community sort of feels overall on sort of the future of arts and culture in Boerne, and it's up to everyone to help implement the plan and be a active participant as things move forward. So I'm certainly encourage you all to look at all of your community plans that your council has passed over the years and sort of see how everything's going and really look through them. It's one of my favorite parts of this work is just understanding how local government works and sort of how all of these different plans and strategies sort of overlap to deliver you all the services and the community that you deserve. So That's kind of a nice part of this work is you leave something behind. We get to leave a plan behind that hopefully is really effective for you all, but it's up to you all to be to continue to participate in the process. And so something we really encourage. Sorry, sort of a long answer to Edward Rogers's question, but hopefully that was helpful. And just a note for all of your comments tonight. I'm seeing a significant amount of comments. We will be logging all of these and noting them for sharing with the city and city staff. So just note that we'll make sure that all of this is shared so they can see any of your questions and concerns in writing. It's always helpful to get that feedback as a city staff member.
There was a follow-up question again about the next steps. So yes, once the draft plan, once we have heard your feedback until through September 27th, there will be a period of time where we're integrating that feedback, and then this plan will be presented to City Council. So the goal is for City Council to review the plan. At that point, it's still a draft. So the goal is to get City Council to review a draft and then provide feedback. And then after that, get it adopted.
And I'll just chime in at the end of that. Roxana explained it exceptionally well, but that is typically the process for this. We'll take this draft feedback, and the draft feedback we get in that interim time, and we will eventually go to council with that. We'll get feedback from council and then come forward with, just like any of our other plans, they'll get formally adopted by city council and implemented into our larger rolling 10-year plan.
If anyone else have any questions, we're here for a few more minutes tonight.
We always want to see as many voices, whether it's in our conversations or in the chat, as possible. So if you haven't yet had a chance to chime in, please feel free to do so. For anybody who is in the chat, also, there are people asking questions and qualifications, qualifiers, but if there's something that you're particularly excited about this plan or arts and culture in Boerne, let us know.
All right, I think looks like we've kind of tapered off on the chat. If we have no other questions, I'd like to thank again everyone for their participation in this and their participation throughout this process. And again, encourage you to look at that draft plan, provide as much commentary as you can, again, through that website, that email, or that call number. And we thank you for your time. Oh, let's see. I apologize. It looks like we got one more. Roxana and Alex, that is a you question.
Jeff Flynn asks, as you reviewed and became familiar with the Boerne art scene, were you surprised at all at the level of support, both figuratively and financially, from city and other entities, more or less than you expected? Roxana, I'll let you react to that first.
Sure thing. I'll briefly also mention there was a comment about the chat being disabled. Yes, please use the Q&A feature. Please, 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 the Q&A feature. And in response to the level of support. So this is an inaugural arts and culture planning effort. It is the first time that the city is doing this. So we're really we're not starting from a clean slate, right? Because there's already so much happening in terms of arts and culture, but there really hasn't been an organized way that the city is supporting arts and culture. And so we see this in line with communities that are starting an arts and culture planning effort. We also work with many communities that have already gone through the planning efforts, and that's a very, very different process. And so we would say that in line with communities that are just starting an arts and culture plan, we are seeing the same amount of support.
And where I would add to that is, we define culture broadly. So for example, Boerne has a significant amount of festivals and events on its calendar every year. And the city has participation in those festivals and events. So that's an example of where the city has been involved over the years, and I think that's really, really positive. That's bringing people together. I mean, we were there, like Roxana was said, right before the eclipse, right? And that was, that you all were going to be, right in line with the eclipse, and it was really great to see the kind of community branding efforts around that to invite people into the kind of share in the experience. So I think that's also typical where we see a lot of communities have a lot of strength is in bringing folks together in their festivals and events, and that's something that you all are doing well. But when we got there, I think we were both really impressed by the existing sort of public art program and the sculptures that are in place that really help sort of set that local identity. And that's something that the city has certainly invested in. And that, I think I think that's just, it was nice to see that there was already all of these efforts. And really what the arts and culture plan does is kind of tie them all together and connect them into one kind of strategic vision. And so that's really what we're set out to do with this work, and then trying to really plan for the future where you may need more, infrastructure and assets, and need to kind of study that and understand what that might mean. Maybe that's the good segue to adjourn here. So how soon would we expect a final draft to come back to us? So Roxana, do you want to talk about the schedule one more time?
Yes, and after I give the scaffolding, I'll hand it over to Nick as well. So, so please submit your feedback through the study website, through the study hotline, through the study email, through September 27th. Write to us, call us. The next step after that is we integrate the feedback, the city reviews it, and then it will go up for council, and the council will review the draft. And Nick will probably be better able to answer the timeline, but once it gets up to council, it is probably going to be a short period after that.
That's correct. And our expectation is hopefully the end of October at the latest. But October is a good landing point for that. Right. Well, with that, we will go ahead and wrap this webinar up. Wait, one moment. No problem. Excellent questions, Mr. Flynn. We appreciate your time. Again, I do want to say I appreciate everyone's time. I know I've said that 7 times tonight, but it really is valuable going through the community process and getting as much feedback as we can. So we do appreciate you all taking the time to look through this document, as well as those who participated in everything prior to this, and y'all's continued participation as we move forward. We hope you have an excellent night, and we look forward to hearing from you through that website, that email, or that call tree. So have an excellent night, and we will talk to you at our next council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Good evening.
Thank you so much. Bye.